Hello guys and gals, my name is Jack Bolin, aka the Gameboy, and I'd like to welcome you to the Mr. Worldly Wiseman editorial. Now y'all might be wondering, who the heck is this kid? And why is he talking to me? I am a conservative, Southern Baptist white boy, and I may or may not go to the same church as my boss got sours. And did I mention that I'm now an elder's kid? So why am I here? Just to suffer? Yes and no. I am here to do what y'all love, reviewing video games, while also analyzing Christianity within it. And as y'all can see, me and Scott have broken into the old Freddy Fazbear's Pizza down here in Aurora. I would show you the footage, but I don't think I want to add another thing to my criminal record. And with the Five Nights at Freddy's movie releasing just tomorrow at the time of recording this, I thought it'd be the perfect opportunity to talk about the most famous indie horror game probably ever, Five Nights at Freddy's. Okay. So, I'm pretty sure we're all aware that Five Nights at Freddy's doesn't have that clear of a story. And by clear of a story, it has none at all. So what I've done is, and what I would recommend anyone who wants to know anything about the series do, is go watch Game Theory's timeline video that I just released. That's all we're gonna get, guys. That's all we're gonna get. But, it covers everything up to 1 to Ruin, and takes only like 2 hours of your day. So, let's just jump into it. We begin our story in 1983 at Fredbear's Family Diner. The two owners of the establishment, William Afton and Henry Emily, had successfully brought their robotic animals to life, combining man-made costumes for the employees to wear offstage to interact with kids, and machine-powered animatronics to be used on stage to perform while the children ate. And alongside Fredbear's was their sister location, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, but we'll cover that here in a second. Afton and Henry were both fathers, William having 2 sons and a daughter, and Henry having a set of twins, a boy and a girl. Now, because Afton was so busy running the restaurant with Henry, he had his oldest son Michael watch his younger son, presumably named Evan, while his daughter Elizabeth stayed home with their mother. Mike was annoyed that he had to watch his brother while his sister got to stay home with their mother, so Mike decided to make his brother suffer by using a Foxy the Pirate mask to scare his brother, causing him to have nightmares. Afton, being the semi-neglectful father he is, just shrugs it off. Tomorrow is another day, he would mumble to himself. Little did he know that everything would change right before his eyes. For almost a week now, Mike would torment his brother, causing Evan to fear Fredbear's, the place he had once loved and adored. And on his brother's birthday, Mike and his friends decided to play a little prank on Crying Child over here, lifting him up and dragging him over to the show stage. Mike and his friends lift him up to Fredbear's mouth and shove him inside. The boy began to cry and struggle to get free, but the moisture of the boy's tears was enough to set off the spring locks inside, the mouth slamming down on the boy's head, cutting his frontal lobe clean off. The boy was rushed to the hospital, but unfortunately lost his life. William, crippled with grief, not knowing what to do, drove deeper into his work, ignoring his wife and 2 other children. Somehow, even with the tragedy that just happened, Fredbear's remained open, Henry taking full ownership of the building while Afton remained behind the scenes, coming up with new robotics for the company. Eventually, William would create this underground bunker beneath his house, where he would conduct his robotic experiments. There, he would create a replica of Evan's bedroom and trap Mike in there to punish him for what his little prank did to his youngest son. Late one night, Afton went to the local bar and began to recall all that happened. This jealousy and hatred for Henry began to boil inside Afton, and after a few too many drinks, he was kicked out of the bar. He got in his car and in a drunken fit of rage, sped back to Fredbear's to give Henry a piece of his mind. When he got there, he found Charlotte, Henry's daughter, trapped outside of the building, bullies laughing at her from inside. It was then Afton got a horrific idea. He stepped out of his car and approached Charlotte, and right there, in the alleyway, he killed her and sped off. After this, Fredbear's would finally shut down, Henry sending Fredbear, Spring Bonnie, and the security puppet to Freddy's. The next 2 years were quiet for the most part. Henry slowed down to grieve, but Afton kept going, diving deeper and deeper into his work, eventually surpassing Henry in his robotics. Now one day at Freddy's, Afton got this itch. He remembered how it felt after he killed Charlotte, and after donning his golden rabbit costume, lured 5 kids to the back room, killing them and stuffing them inside the animatronic suits. The police were called and they searched Freddy's top to bottom, but not a single kid was found. And with no other choice, Henry was forced to shut down Freddy's along with Fredbear's. Henry then kicked Afton out of the company, taking full ownership of the franchise. Another 2 years passed and Freddy's was having its grand reopening, this time with highly advanced robots based off the toys they had sold prior. With a facial recognition system, the robots would help defend the kids from Afton. Afton learned about the grand reopening and secretly applied for the security guard position. He once again snuck into the building during the day and again lured 5 kids to their doom, causing yet another shutdown. But not without one final birthday. On the day of the birthday party, night guard turned day guard Jeremy is involved in an accident causing him to lose his frontal lobe in an event known as the Bite of 87. He survived, however, and continued to live his life. Afton returned home and questions began to rush through his mind. On his shift, he witnessed the animatronics moving freely and fluidly. He wanted to test his theories, so he decided to open his own restaurant called Circus Baby's Pizza World. He designed his robots to capture and contain kids, making them appealing enough to lure children close enough to capture them within their stomach hatches. Unfortunately, this experiment of his cost him another one of his children. On the day of the grand opening, his daughter Elizabeth got too close to the main star of the show, Circus Baby, and was captured and was dead by the time Afton found her. 6 more years had passed, and Freddy's tried to open one last time, using the old animatronics, but with the reputation Afton gave it, it closed its doors at the end of the year. With the place shut down, Afton broke into the abandoned pizzeria and began to investigate the animatronics, dismantling them and dragging their endoskeletons back to his underground bunker. He melted them all down and created this substance called Remnant, a liquid filled with life itself. He went back to the pizzeria to see if he could find any little scrap he might have left behind, but ended up finding something else instead. The ghost of his past victims confronted him, cornering him into one of the safe rooms. One of the ghosts approached him, and Afton quickly donned his Spring Bonnie suit, regaining his power over them. But due to how run down the building was, a drop of water fell into the suit and the spring locks began to fall into place, crushing Afton's body as he collapsed to the floor. The spirits disappeared, and a security guard found the suit of the animatronics on the ground and reported a break-in. Henry came in to inspect the damage, walking into the safe room, and his eyes immediately landed on Afton in the spring-lock suit. And saying nothing, he turned the other way and requested that all safe rooms would be sealed off in this location. We shift our attention to Michael Afton, the last remaining child of the Afton household. He entered his father's office as he was instructed to do in the case his father were to ever go missing, and walked over to a giant bookshelf and pushed it aside. He expected to find a safe, but instead found an elevator to his father's underground bunker. He entered and began to head down. He explored this almost futuristic-looking workshop and stumbled across his father's files. In them, he learned about his father's horrific experiments and how his sister's spirit now controlled the animatronic that took her life. He had learned that all of the rumors he heard as a kid were true, that his father was the one who killed those kids. Michael felt betrayed, and it was then that baby called out to him, asking for his help. He didn't think twice in accepting the offer. Following her commands, he ends up wandering into the wrong side of the scooping room, and the giant metal claw lunges towards him, ripping out his insides as the wire-like endoskeletons of the animatronics make their home in Mike's now empty shell of a body. The next few weeks were not his own. The animatronics took over every aspect of Mike's life, going to work, coming home, everything. But eventually Mike's body began to rot, turning a deep purple color, and the animatronics were forced to abandon ship by puking themselves out into the sewer. But somehow, with all that had just happened, Mike was still alive and was able to move freely again. He then vowed to right the wrongs of his father's actions, and in doing so would hopefully lead him back to his father so that he could answer for his crimes. Mike would apply for a security guard at both the new and old Freddy Fazbear's, and at the end of every shift he would set the location on fire to burn away any of the remnant that remained inside, as it couldn't withstand high temperatures. And that was really it. After Freddy's and Fredbear's, there really wasn't anything left of Fazbear Entertainment. Both Henry and William had vanished off the face of the earth. 30 years passed, and Mike saw an ad for Fazbear's Fright, a horror attraction aiming to make a buck off the tragedy of Freddy's. Mike applied for the security guard position and immediately got the job. A week went by and nothing. Mike almost quit until he got the phone call he had been waiting for. His employer told him that he had finally found a real functioning animatronic, a yellow bunny. Mike looked at the cameras and sure enough, he was there. His father in that old, decrepit Spring Bonnie suit, his corpse decayed and moldy. And while Mike was dealing with his father, Charlie, who now possessed the puppet, was dealing with the ghosts of the dead children. Once the spirits were put to rest, Mike messed with the flimsy wiring and set the location on fire, ending this madness once and for all. I wish. Somehow Afton survived and escaped the burning building and went into hiding, but not for long. We switch back over to Henry, who had been secretly working on a plan to end this story of tragedy once and for all.
It's a new day. It's your time to shine. It's time to take your career into your own hands. You've saved money your whole life. Great. Now it's time to put all your eggs into one basket and take a huge gamble on your future. A gamble that comes with a 100% chance of success in some cases. What are we talking about? We're talking about becoming a Fazbear Entertainment franchisee.
Mike saw this and once again immediately applied and was handed the keys. Together, Mike and Henry lured all of the remaining animatronics into the building, and at the end of the week, Mike sealed all of the doors as the curtains begin to close on this beloved series.
You played right into our hands. Did you really think that this job just fell out of the sky for you? No. This was a gift for us. You gathered them all together in one place, just like he asked you to. All of those little souls in one place, just for us. A gift. Now we can do what we were created to do and be complete. I will make you proud, Daddy. Watch, listen, and be full.
Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth, if you still even remember that name, but I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not here to receive a gift, nor have you been called here by the individual you assume, although you have indeed been called. You have all been called here, into a labyrinth of sounds and smells, misdirection, and misfortune. A labyrinth with no exit, a maze with no prize. You don't even realize that you are trapped. Your lust for blood has driven you in endless circles, chasing the cries of children in some unseen chamber, always seeming so near, yet somehow out of reach. But you will never find them. None of you will. This is where your story ends. And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. I am remaining as well. I am nearby. This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still, and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend. My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well. It's in your nature to protect the innocent. I'm sorry that on that day, the day you were shut out and left to die, no one was there to lift you up into their arms, the way you lifted others into yours. And then, what became of you? I should have known you wouldn't be content to disappear. Not my daughter. I couldn't save you then, so let me save you now. It's time to rest, for you, and for those you have carried in your arms. This ends, for all of us, in communication.
And as the flames began to settle and the spirits left the earth into the afterlife, Afton awoke in an office. He called out, but no human responded. His call was only met with the animatronics, who proceeded to rip him limb from limb. The sound of a clock seemed to reset everything, and as Afton cowered, curled up into a ball, he saw the spirit of one of the children he had murdered so long ago, the one he had left completely broken. Her face was the only thing he could see, and it would be the only thing he would see for the rest of eternity, suffering in his very own personal hell as the animatronics approached him again. A beautiful ending to this tragic tale. And I know people say that VR ruined it, but I have to disagree. Because knowing what we know now with the Mimic and everything else, FNAF 1 through 6 is still concluded, and nothing has changed that. Afton is still in his own personal hell, being tormented by Golden Freddy, and Henry, Mike, and the missing children are all at peace. Now, does this mean I like the new FNAF? No, it sucks. And don't get me wrong, I loved VR, and I'm semi-excited to see what they do for VR 2, but overall, it just doesn't feel like Five Nights. I can't quite explain it, but ever since Security Breach, the series has felt off to me. When the series first came out back in 2014, it took the world by storm. But why? What was it about this point-and-click indie horror game that stole the hearts of millions? Well, in a way, I think FNAF did what Resident Evil 4 did all the way back in 2005. See, Resi 4 changed up the formula for Resident Evil and gaming as a whole, moving from the classic top-down camera view to a third-person over-the-shoulder, which wasn't really seen much at the time besides 2002's Splinter Cell. But along with a bunch of other things, Resident Evil 4 solidified itself as one of the best video games of all time, it even getting itself a worthy remake just this year. The success of RE4 inspired companies to adopt the third-person camera view, which is why we have games such as Dead Space, Gears of War, Devil May Cry, Uncharted, and it even inspired games like BioShock, believe it or not. But what does this all have to do with Freddy's? Well, Five Nights at Freddy's, like I said, took everyone by storm, with its unique gameplay, creepy atmosphere, and intriguing lore. It sparked an interest in indie horror games and indie games in general by audiences around the world, allowing people like Toby Fox to go on to create Undertale, just to name one. It single-handedly created the most unique fan base I have ever seen. From art, music, shows, movies, and fan games, people fell in love with this series and wanted to show it. And what I really think puts this all together is Scott Cawthon himself. Unlike many of the other game developers, Cawthon was very open about these projects, even going on to later hire people like Kane Carter, Emil Mako, and Nixon, the creators of the most popular FNAF fan games, Pop Goes, Five Nights at Candy's, and The Joy of Creation, so that they could all have new entries in the series, which I actually believe deserve their own reviews somewhere down the line. Even Jonah Chrome, before everything, got to make One Night at Flumpty's 3. People were able to make and play fan-made games but of the series they loved without the fear of them being taken down. And that's what made Five Nights at Freddy's so popular in my opinion. Fans were able to use their talents to create something to show tribute to this franchise that they loved, and even having the creator of that series show his appreciation for that thing you worked so hard to make. But lately, myself and a lot of other fans haven't really felt that way in a long time. The fan games are still going strong, sure, but like I said, the series has felt off since the release of Security Breach. And it might have been Scott's announcement that he's retiring as well, but for me, ever since VR, the series has been going in a direction that I personally don't like. And I'm not denying that Sister Location had some weird stuff as well, and that one to me is the weakest one of the originals, and the fandom itself isn't what it once was as well. Freddy's has been a pretty big part of my childhood, and seeing it in the state that it's in right now is heartbreaking, honestly. It was one of the core things that drove me to begin writing for my story that I'm currently working on, the final push for that being Meta Runner. And I sort of noticed this when I was reviewing Bendy, but I was offered closure with that series with the release of Dark Revival, and I'm hoping that this movie that's coming out will offer the same to me as well. I've associated Freddy's with some good memories, but I've also associated with a lot of bad ones too. So I'm just ready to move on from it. So whether the movie is good or bad, I think that's it for me. I'll pack my bags and say goodbye to this series that I've loved for almost 10 years now. Now, with all of that said, what on earth could I pull out of FNAF at Freddy's? Well, surprisingly, FNAF, through all of its obscure lore, shows us just how dangerous jealousy can be. Afton's jealousy drove him to murder his best friend's daughter. It drove him to take the lives of multiple other children, using them in his own sickening experiments, and it eventually got himself killed. Jealousy is very hazardous, because through that, we could be lured into other sinful desires. Look at King Saul, for example. Saul became jealous of David that he would go on and try to hunt and kill him for the rest of his lifetime. And even if we look all the way back to Genesis, we can see this with Cain and Abel. Genesis chapter 4 verses 3 to 8. When it was time for the harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. Abel also brought a gift, the best portions of the firstborn lambs from his flock. The Lord accepted Abel and his gift, but he did not accept Cain and his gift. This made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected. "Why are you so angry?" the Lord asked Cain. "Why do you look so dejected? You will be accepted if you do what is right, but if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you, but you must subdue it and be its master." One day, Cain suggested to his brother, "Let's go out into the fields." And while they were in the fields, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Jealousy is a lot of the time the core reason for a person's sin. Men sometimes are jealous of other men's wives and begin to lust after her, or some people are just jealous because someone got that big promotion at work, and they begin to loathe that person. Now, some people might bring up, "Oh, well, God said he was a jealous God." Yeah, you want to know why? Because we as humans were stupid enough to create our own false gods. What I think we as humans need to understand is, we are not God. We are sin-filled, evil piles of flesh. So even when we have right intentions, they are still filthy rags in the sight of our Lord. Isaiah 64:6. We are all infected and impure with sin. When we display our righteous deeds, they are nothing but filthy rags. Like autumn leaves, we wither and fall, and our sin sweeps us away like the wind. And if I'm not mistaken, God wasn't jealous of another man's wife. He was jealous that his children's affection were being targeted towards demons. We've really got to stop elevating man, because our Parker pride has got us so caught up in ourselves that we actually think we're better than God. And again, last I checked, our good works are filth. And you want to know something? God would rather roll around in the mud than be touched by human hands. 2 Samuel chapter 6 verses 6 to 7. But when they arrived at the threshing floor of Nacon, the oxen stumbled, and Uzzah reached out his hand and steadied the ark of God. Then the Lord's anger was aroused against Uzzah, and God struck him dead because of this. So Uzzah died right there beside the ark of God. Still think we're saints? But hey, you want to know something else too? God still loves you anyway. He even sent his son to die for you. Because even though we were still covered in filth and wickedness, Jesus came to die for us, so that we will be made clean through his blood. So why be jealous? We're children of God. We've gained so much more than we could ever imagine. And yes, we as Christians will struggle with worldly jealousy, but when we struggle with that, we need to remember that whatever God has planned for us is infinitely times better than the thing we're jealous about. Jealousy is just another obstacle we as humans will face in our lives. But as long as we keep our minds on Christ, we'll be fine. And I know I say that a lot, but it's the only thing we can do. We can't do anything without Christ. Even though the world says that we can, we can't. Our only hope is in Christ Jesus. Thank you all for putting up with me today. I know I can kind of be a handful sometimes, but why not share these videos with your friends? We want to get these messages to as many people as we can. And before you leave, why not subscribe, like, and in honor of today's video, write pizza in the comments. I've been the Gameboy, and I'll see you later. Peace.